Sabko bari sanmane ke saath prem se hridik swagat. With great love and respect, I welcome you all with all my heart. We're asleep to who we really are. That's really something, isn't it? I'm asleep to my real identity. And as we start to move on the spiritual path, we start to wake up to this strange truth. And we begin to realize there's something more to me than I ever knew or dreamt. I am not who I think I am. And it's when I think I'm this limited person, I get myself in so much trouble. And this is because I'm not remembering who I really am. And according to the Shaivite sages, they say, you are Shiva. You are something greater. The news is way more wonderful than you ever imagined. The narrative of Kashmir Shaivism is tremendously good because it ends by us awakening to our Shiva nature. We start to awaken. It's not explainable. The Shaivite term for not explainable is grace. It means suddenly we start to become aware. A light goes on. We start to somehow wake up. And we get this understanding that there's something more. And then we start, as we start to awaken, we start to see the contours of this narrative, what the narrative really is. We thought it was one narrative. We thought it was a plot of a very dismal novel. Probably a comic novel, or maybe a tragic novel. But we discover it's a different kind of narration, this Shiva's narration. So this first statement, Chitti Svatantra Vishva Siddhi Hetuhu, I always want people to memorize this one. Chitti Svatantra. Chitti is consciousness. Svatantra is freely. Vishva, the Vishva is the world. Vishva Siddhi, the city of the universe. Hetuhu. So the supreme Chitti creates the universe. Doesn't explain it. Says this whole universe is born from consciousness. Shankarananda, the author, is not trying to prove it. He's asserting it. He's affirming. He's saying, listen, this universe is created by consciousness. Now suppose you were in a dream, you were dreaming, and a figure, let's call him Shankarananda, appeared as a character in your dream. And he said to you in the dream, you're the dreamer. And he said to you in your dream, this world is a creation of your own consciousness. And you'd say, well, prove it. But then you'd wake up and you'd say that that character was telling you the truth, right? So in this dream, these sages are telling us there's a higher reality from which this whole world appears as consciousness. So that's the first sutra. Chitti creates the universe. Second one, of its own free will, Chitti unfolds the universe on its own screen. So this whole world appears in consciousness, not in some other thing, not in some other substance. What is it made of? Consciousness. Just like in your own dream, everything takes place inside that, your own awareness. So this is what Shaivism says. It affirms this. This whole world is a play of consciousness. Now, would that have implications if you accepted this point of view? What would the implications of this be? It's worth contemplating. If you lived in a world of consciousness, now there's one more piece of the puzzle. Let's look at the third one. This is one of my favorite ones. Tanana anurupa graya grahaka bedad. That universe is manifold because of the differentiation of reciprocally adapted objects and subjects. There. It's all there. You get it? Now we'll meditate. That if you can think of universal consciousness, which is a consciousness that contains everything within itself, and then it splits apart into subjects and objects, into a subject and an object. And we each live this separated life. We are a subject in the world of objects. Those are the two worlds, the inner world and the outer world, right? I'm a subject and the world is object. In fact, I always like to say that in my universe there's only one subject but billions of objects. Isn't that true of you? There's only one subject in your universe. You. You are the subject of your whole universe. Isn't that a shocking statement? Billions of objects, millions of other people and things, objects, but only one subject, you, O Shiva. You alone are the subject of your universe. And so Shaivism says that universal consciousness makes this split of reciprocally adapted, that the subjects and objects fit together, that every subject goes around with an object. You go around with your objective field, your prakriti, your objective field. You wake up, and most of the time we're in a war with our objective field. We think, I want something from it. It's getting things from me. I hate this thing. And yet, really, when you look at it a certain way, it's your objective field. Every time you wake up, it's there. And it fills itself with different things. I don't know if I'm communicating this. But there are different people come into it, and they come and they go and so on. And all the time we're wrestling with this subjective field. But all the time it's an expression of my own awareness. When I'm asleep, it's not there. When I wake up, it's there again. Here it is. And I hate it if I can only improve it. Am I dramatizing it? And we're at war with ourselves. This is a profound struggle we're in with ourselves. That's what it is. We're in war with ourselves. So this is what Shaivism says. It's manifold because of the differentiation of reciprocally adapted objects and subjects. You should think about your objective field as your very own self. My projection. The world is as I see it. My projection. And start to give your objective field love. Give it love. Give it acceptance. Give it love and acceptance. See what happens. Try this out. It's an experiment. Hug it. Yeah. But we're in such a struggle, such stress, such tension. And so Shaivism says one of the practices to see the objective field as one with yourself. So there's this barrier, this split, where we're apparently separate. And this is like a first initiation, is to overcome this barrier. All right, so this is the way consciousness. This is, so far, we described what consciousness is. And it's also created the universe by splitting into subjects and objects. All right, now we move on to another field. This is the state of ignorance. So Shiva forgets who he is. Universal consciousness contracts, and here's one description of it. Garbe chitta vikaso vishishta vidya swapna. Ordinary knowledge or limited expansion of consciousness, which we could simplify this translation, which develops through the mind within the realm of Maya, is dreamlike and purely imaginary. Everything in your mind, everything that comes in your ordinary mind is imaginary, is delusional. Isn't that a comforting thought? Everything I think about with my mind, we don't have to be quite that extreme, but we should understand we pay a lot of, we give a lot of credence to our mind, but the mind's actually a dim bulb. It's a reducing valve. and it holds a very contracted view of reality. And it's a good tool, but there are higher ways of knowing. So this says that we should be a little suspicious of the understandings of our mind. If we live only in the mind, we live in a diminished universe. There's a much higher way of knowing. So this is the world of Shiva forgetting who he is. He lives in the mind. He becomes a mind. He judges things. He evaluates things, all with this kind of dim awareness. Here's another one on this state of ignorance, the state of consciousness. This is my favorite one. This I call the Depression Sutra, which shows how modern the Shaivite sensibility was, even 1,000 years ago. He says, just as a plunderer carries away the valuables of the house, even so depression saps away the vitality of the body. Dr. Phil would love this. The depression proceeds from ignorance. And so when we feel depressed, all our vitality is sapped away. Our life force is drained away. When we haven't learned the art of keeping our minds in a certain condition, then our whole life energy is being ripped off. Then it makes the interesting statement, this depression proceeds from ignorance. And this was what was so winning for me when I first came to the path of yoga, that it doesn't come from sin, but from ignorance. That it's not because we're sinners, that's why our condition is the way it is, which is what our Western religions tell us, but it's because we don't know who we are, because we've forgotten the real narrative, the Shiva narrative. We've forgotten our true glory and our true identity. If that ignorance disappears by unmesha, how can that depression last in the absence of its cause? What is unmesha but the experience of Shakti, the experience of the upward movement, the upward shift, the experience of our true nature, some taste of the self, of joy, of ananda, upliftment that comes when we taste that. And even in mundane ways, when we have a little bit of pleasure, a little bit of fun, we feel much better about ourselves. We get less depressed. And this is only a tiny little bit of a taste, but if we experience the true essence of the self, we're lifted out of depression, and depression goes away. All our depression, if we know who we are, all our depression disappears. All our feelings of meaninglessness, worthlessness, hopelessness, despair disappear, because we're always in touch with a rejuvenating, a socket of energy.